think they focus on it in a transactional manner. And it's a bit of a leap to look at it as more than that and to really look at it as the lifeblood of your company and to leverage that data to enhance what you can do for your customers and enhance your own company's success.
Welcome back to another installment of the Next Gen Case Study Series. In this episode, we have on Wynne Nowland, who is the CEO of Bradley and Parker Inc., a prominent figure in the corporate insurance industry. She joined Bradley and Parker in 1986 and has since played a crucial role in the company's growth and success. Nowland has extensive experience in worldwide insurance programs, captive insurance, participating insurance programs, and directors and officers liability. I'm excited to have you on the show. Welcome, Wynne, to the program.
Thank you so much, Devin. Nice to see you and nice to be asked to join.
Yeah, I'm excited for this, particularly given your extensive experience in the industry. And on that note, I'd love to get a quick Cole's Notes from your perspective of who you are, where you came from, how you ended up as the CEO of Bradley and Parker.
So I've been here, as you mentioned, since 1986, which is really more years than I would care to admit, because people start to do the arithmetic and they can figure out what I'm so desperately trying to hide. But I've had just a tremendous run at this company. I consider myself blessed and very fortunate to lead the team that we have here. When I started, it was my third job out of college. Like a lot of college graduates, you get out, but you're really not exactly sure what you're going to do. And if somebody had told me I was going to end up in the insurance business, I would have told you were crazy. That wasn't anything that interested me at the time. But there was just kind of a unique set of circumstances with a campus recruiter that really made me change my view of what the industry was all about. So I had a couple of different jobs before I started here. And I started here back in 1986, as I mentioned, as what we call a broker. And basically a broker is the person in an insurance operation where we match the client and the need that they have for insurance with an appropriate insurance company. So we're kind of the go-between. Most corporate insurance in this country is still bought that way. Personal insurance, a lot of it is still bought that way, but there's been more inroads in direct writing, which is where you deal directly with the insurance company, and online scenarios in the past, 10 or 12 years. But in the corporate space, it still mostly is either brokers or agents. And I won't bore you with the difference between those two because it's really not pertinent. But I started out here as a broker and basically worked myself up over the years in a variety of roles until I became CEO, I think in 2017. So I've been in this chair for a while now.
Insurance not being your primary ambition, which I totally understand. But there had to have been something in it and in your experience that kept you there, drawn to it, and motivated to achieve the success that you have. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Sure, absolutely. The industry is very different when you're in the inside versus what the opinion of it is from the outside. I don't think we're the only industry like that. There's a few others, but it doesn't necessarily, here I'm outside of, I'm in a suburb of New York City. And if you grow up around here and you want a profession in the finance trades, the big attraction is the typical Wall Street stuff. The stocks, the bonds, the hedge funds, those kind of things. That's what people gravitate to. They don't gravitate towards insurance. But once I was involved, I realized that there were some unique opportunities in this business that most other businesses really don't have. And what I'm speaking about specifically is recurring income. Um, if a company buys an insurance policy and let's say it's $100,000, and the rate of commission on that policy is say 10%, which is a reasonable assumption. If you sell that policy for the first year, the company gets $10,000. What a lot of people don't understand is that kind of becomes annuitized because as long as you continue to renew that policy, which is very different than selling it for the first time, as long as you continue to renew it, you get that 10% each and every year. So there's a real chance at both a company level and at a personal level to build growth on an exponential basis because it becomes kind of like a model. If you renew 80 to 90% of what you have and you add X amount to that, you're really able to fuel growth. And there's not a lot of other industries with that opportunity. If I sell you a car, I have to wait, until you need another car, which may be 3, 4, 5 years. If I sell you a commercial real estate lease, the next chance I have to sell you something might be 10 or 12 years away, where we're really in a position to make that sale each and every year. And the acquisition is nowhere near as difficult when you're renewing something than when you're selling it right out of the bat.
Okay. So it's the opportunity for growth and the potential for revenue generation that kind of continues to fuel that business.
Correct. The other thing is, once you get involved in the business, there is, aside from the financial rewards, which are definitely there for those people that want to put the effort in, the other thing about this business is there is a tremendous amount of satisfaction because even though a lot of people don't love insurance when they're paying their premium, I always like to kid around and say, when my own homeowner's premium comes in, I'm not so excited because up here in New York, it's going up constantly. Not that excited to pay it. When my head of HR comes in and tells me about our health insurance renewal, I'm not that excited about that 20% increase either. So I get that the public perception of insurance is not tremendous. However, I have seen many, many times in my career where insurance does exactly what it's supposed to do, and that's to help either people or organizations put their lives or their companies back together after what could have been a devastating loss and situation. So there's a tremendous amount of satisfaction when we can be there at the time of a claim and help a business or a person right themselves after what can very often be a traumatizing event.
Yeah, there's an intrinsic value knowing that you played a role in helping somebody when they were in desperate need of that help. That's
exactly right. It is so satisfying.
Very rewarding work. So let's talk about that experience for your customers or for your clients. I'm sure that as you mentioned, if somebody wanted to put the work in, there's a lot of reward on the other side, as you mentioned. What does that work look like in terms of trying to find and convince people that you're the best choice for them?
So it really does. It's changed. I've been doing this for so long. It's changed quite a bit over the years. Years ago, I'm talking maybe 20 years or so ago, and certainly prior to that, but up until about 20 years or so ago, this was a fairly competitive business with respect to both pricing and coverage. And when I say pricing, I mean, one company might want $50,000 for something and another company might be willing to do it for 30. Well, if you're the one that has 30 and you're up against the guy that has 50, that's a pretty good position to be in. That used to happen quite frequently. The other thing that we saw from a competitive standpoint was the kinds of coverages that were offered. One policy might just offer relief in case of a claim where it's a fire. And then other policies will offer that fire insurance, but they'll also offer wind loss and flood and earthquake and all sorts of other things. So again, if you had somebody that had a policy that was more restricted and you were offering something that was more broad, that was something you could really, make them understand. And there was a clear value added reason to change. That's gotten more challenging because the business, as so many businesses have, has become more homogenized. We have far fewer players. Haven't seen as much of it lately in the last 5 years or so, but in the last 10 or 15 years before that, there was a tremendous amount of merger and acquisition activity in the insurance carrier space. And, where you used to have 30 carriers, now there's 15 or whatever those real numbers are. But there's been a real consolidation, which candidly, I don't really think at the end benefits consumers too much. The companies like to come up with some spin as to how it does, but I always think less competition is not good for customers. So we have that issue, and the coverage offerings have become much more homogenized. There's not a lot anymore that differs, like some of the household names: Chubb, Hartford, Travelers. Those are names most people know. They've heard. Liberty Mutual. There's not a lot of meat separating anymore. It's pretty much all the same enhancements. So there's not a lot of differences between the companies, and they're kind of priced all, neck and neck with each other. So those two factors make it difficult to be a disruptor. And, you kind of have to be a disruptor in order to make deals happen. So what we've done over the past few years is really look beyond those policies and look at auxiliary services about what kind of value do we bring to the table, which is, okay, if we assume that they can buy this same thing from anybody and it's all pretty much the same, what can we bring to the table to turn the tide in our favor so that we prevail and are able to be a disruptor? So we've worked on that pretty hard for the past half a dozen years and have had a good amount of success. And some of it is building ancillary services, things that people don't normally associate with insurance, we provide. And we just try to provide a better customer experience than what they can get elsewhere. And it's worked very successfully for us.
So tell me some ways that you have kind of elevated that customer experience. I find this such an interesting topic.
So what we did, like I said, about a half a dozen years ago, we looked pretty closely at the needs of the typical business owner in the space that we serve. Our sweet spot is not insuring like Xerox or Fortune 500 companies. We have done that. We have some customers like that, but that's not our sweet spot. At the same time, our sweet spot is not Main Street USA. That's not what we have. Some of that business too, but it's not where we kind of live and breathe. We kind of live and breathe in what we call the middle market or the high-end entrepreneurial business or the low-end publicly traded business. So, employees between 50 and 200 employees, sales between 10 million and a half a billion. That's kind of where we play. So we looked at those parameters to kind of understand some needs that our customers might have had that were not being met, that were not necessarily insurance needs per se, but that were kind of ancillary to the insurance. So we developed a suite of services that we provide most of our customers, things like HR consulting. If you have an entrepreneurial business or even a small public business where there's maybe 25, 30, 40, 100 employees, oftentimes they don't have a real HR department. They'll have like a operations leader or an office manager or something like that. But those kinds of people are typically wearing a bunch of different hats and they're not an HR expert. We provide a service that gives those kinds of companies access to HR professionals that help guide them with things like writing employee manuals, dealing with training. For instance, here in New York State, sexual harassment training is mandatory for all companies. So we help them with those kinds of training protocols and just all sorts of other things that would fall into kind of an HR realm where larger companies, they have this all in-house, but smaller entrepreneurs don't. So we fill that need. That's one area. Another area is that since the health legislation that was passed in 2009, which is, most known by the term Obamacare, inside the industry, we call it ACA, which is the American Cares Act. That when that legislation was passed, definitely helped consumers with respects to employee benefits and health insurance. But it also placed a heavy burden on companies. And when I say companies, I mean employers, not the insurance companies. Placed a heavy burden on employers with respects to compliance issues. And again, big companies with big HR departments, they handle that stuff. Smaller companies, it's a real challenge. So we step in and help them with those compliance issues. So if and when they get audited, which is starting to happen with more frequency, they're not susceptible to any kind of penalty or any kind of negative impact. So that's an example of those are two examples of these kinds of ancillary services we offer, and there's a few more that basically to the customer lets them say, okay, well, if I'm pretty much going to get the same insurance from XYZ company as I am from the folks at Bradley and Parker, if I go to Bradley and Parker, I'm getting all this other stuff that they're not charging me for, that if I went out to go buy it on my own would cost me money. So that's where we're kind of trying to this is a phrase everybody uses, but they use it probably because it's true. That's where we're trying to provide that value-added experience.
It seems like you've done a really good job of forming those strategic alliances with the right partners to be able to provide an over and above experience for your clients. What I think is an exceptional effort, because you're spot on in the consumer perspective of insurance being, the man. We don't want to deal with it. Everything's all the same. It's that typical big corporation vibes that people just don't want to participate in anymore. And your efforts to kind of overcome that have become very clear, I think, over time in your efforts to find things that are going to be useful for your clients, which is an admirable strategy. In terms of how you communicate these ideas and attract people into your business, I'm curious to learn, are you doing a lot of outbound marketing in terms of reaching out to people, having these types of conversations and getting them interested? Or are you doing more of the attraction-based marketing where you have advertising and different mediums on social media and that sort of thing where people are coming to you? Which direction do you take? Great
question. I think, as with a lot of companies, we're really kind of using a blended approach right now.
Okay.
One thing we have found through the years that just hasn't worked for us is traditional straight advertising. And by that, I mean print media, television media, radio media. We've probably, I shouldn't say that. We know that when we've tried some of those tactics before, we know that we've sold insurance because of that, but the cost of acquisition is horrible. So, after you beat your head against the wall a few times and you're getting bloody, we try not to continue to do that. So we don't really do much traditional advertising. We are starting to do, again, as most companies are, more social media based items. We're pretty heavily involved in LinkedIn. We're getting more heavily involved in Instagram, especially for some of our product lines that are more personal based. Mm-hmm. We're seeing some interesting results there. I think that's where a lot of the future lies. We also do a good amount. In the old days, we used to do a good amount of direct mail. Those results are terrible, but they're predictable. Um, so, if you have a model where those predictably terrible results, where you can make money on that, then it's something companies should do because it's very predictable. We have found that, I don't know, probably over the last 10 years or so, that those predictably rotten results have gotten more rotten. So that's another thing we're not doing much of anymore. We do a good amount of email marketing, and that's mostly done via a active list of subscribers to newsletters that we have and other information services. Because email marketing can look very attractive because from a price point, it's very attractive. But the last thing you want to do, particularly if you're a well thought of organization in a regulated industry, which we are, the last thing you want to do is, cross over that line into spam territory. It's an easy trap to fall into. So we're very careful that we don't do that, but we make extensive use of that tool where we can. We also like the idea of joint seminars. So historically, if we just do a seminar about an insurance topic, we don't get a lot of attendance because people are just afraid you're there to sell them another policy. So that generally doesn't work so great. But what we'll try to do is come up with kind of a hot topic. An example right now that we've done a few times is the cyber insurance and cyber risk and the ransom attacks that are going on. We're in the middle of one right now that's affecting auto dealers across the country. Chances are, unless they solved it like in the last day or two, chances are if you went to get your car worked on an auto dealer, they're writing it down on a piece of paper because their systems are out.
Wow.
A major software provider for thousands and thousands of auto dealers is under a ransomware attack and their system is shut down. And their insurance carriers are negotiating with the hackers right now. So those kinds of things are out there. So we'll take something like that and maybe get an industry expert, an attorney who deals with that kind of stuff, IT security professionals who deal with that kind of stuff, to help businesses figure out, that minefield that's out there right now. Because the whole thing with insurance is you need to buy it to protect your assets, and to make sure you can get your company back and running if there's some kind of a problem that the insurance can help with. But you're much better off having practices in place as a company that don't contribute to having the claim. So for instance, let's talk about the computer stuff. You're far better off hiring a good computer IT security consultant and really tightening up all your authentications and tightening up your database and how it's accessed and all that stuff. You're much better off doing that than just buying a big cyber insurance policy and saying, oh, we don't care about this other stuff. We have the insurance. That's a terrible idea. We tell that to people all the time. You never want to have a claim because even though we'll pay you to fix it and we'll help get you back to where you were, there's still a world of pain in that process.
Yeah.
So anyway, we'll hook up with other experts and do those kinds of seminars for the general public. And then, that gets our name out there. You get some organic play out of that, some synergies. We find that works out well for us.
Well, and this is such an interesting take because a lot of traditional businesses, especially in insurance, still rely heavily on that, as you put it, the traditional marketing avenues like television, radio, print media, newspapers, that type of thing. And to your point, yes, these are all mediums that are dead and or dying, and I'm sure that we can attribute some of that to the shift in generations and where we're consuming our media and content and all that kind of thing. And
it's so different. It's
yeah.
so different.
And the angle that you guys have taken is a much more sophisticated one in that I imagine there's a lot of technological pieces that play a role in helping you deploy a strategy like this. For example, if you're doing a webinar with a group of people, there's sign up forms, there's the actual presentation stuff, then there's the follow ups. And so, can we kind of dig a little bit deeper into like what kind of technology solutions are you implementing to help with these strategies?
So right now we have what I would consider to be uh, a pretty robust group of technology products that we're using. And one of the nice things about most of them, not all of them, but most of them, is that they're integrated. One of the cool things about this company is that we have been really at the forefront of automation for insurance companies for decades, since the mid 80s, since before I even got here. Um, we were basically fully automated by 1985 when most insurance brokers hadn't even thought of it yet. So we've always been kind of ahead of the curve on that. And of course, now I think the biggest things companies can do is to leverage all of that data that they have. I mean, we have tremendous amount of data, and the way you can leverage that really can change the way that you market yourself to your customers, more so to customers than to prospects, because we certainly maintain data on prospects. We don't have anywhere near the data on a prospect we do as a customer.
Right.
But now we have just a lot of tools that work together. So, for instance, if we want to go on an educational campaign about, we'll use the same topic, cyber insurance and cyber threats and everything else, we can come up with a campaign that says, let's every other month send out something regarding what's going on with this and how you can better protect yourselves and certain steps you can take. And, trying to always keep that value added thing in mind. We're able to very easily schedule those kinds of communications to the customers. And, it's not quite just, a couple of clicks, but it's not that far from that.
Right.
Whereas doing something like that, even 10 years ago, would be much more laborious. Much more laborious. We actually, and this definitely makes us unique in the insurance space for agents and brokers, we actually have an in-house marketing team that kind of handles all that stuff for us. It's kind of blended, like, they're artists. Like if we want a brochure for something, we just design it in-house, whether it's a print brochure or an online brochure, mostly today online. But we do that kind of stuff in-house. If we need our web page, or if we need a new web page added to our site because we took on a different practice, they'll do that stuff for us. But they'll also work with this technology that enables this kind of outbound marketing effort to be done in such a way that it's helpful and not intrusive. I think the fastest way you can turn people off today is to send them too much crap to their email address that they're not interested in seeing.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but when I get that flood of emails in the morning, that's a lot of them are not too exciting. It's a chore. So I don't want anything we ever send to be on that list.
Right. When I'm so proactive about every single email that I get that is not like from somebody that I'm working with, to A, immediately unsubscribe,
Right.
B, to report it as spam, and C, to reply with my obvious displeasure in receiving these unsolicited emails. Now, every once in a while, I'll get a really good one and I'll bite, and I play ball, and that's cool, but it's very rare that occurs. And so I get that having respect for the people that you're trying to turn into clients is a crucial element in the way that you communicate with them.
Yeah,
Beyond that,
it's huge. We'll even, the services we use, if we have somebody that unsubscribes, we know about that.
Mhm.
And, we'll try to figure out, what did we do to turn them off? Sometimes it's just, listen, sometimes people just, they're just not interested and you didn't do anything wrong, but we're always trying to learn and make ourselves better. And if we kind of discover that by accident we did something that's going to annoy people, then, we're going to stop doing it.
Yeah, definitely. From your perspective here, we're kind of coming to the end of our time. From your perspective, I'd love to kind of have a peek at what you think are some of the challenges that your business, or insurance generally is facing in terms of implementing some of this technology.
So that's a great question. And I think not everybody in the industry will admit this because people don't like to admit their shortcomings. Um, the insurance industry is definitely kind of late to the party with technology issues. Everybody. I was alluding to the fact that years ago we were one of the first people to be automated. Well, virtually everybody's automated now, but to what degree you automate?
Mhm.
Are you automated and in a paperless environment? We're both. Are you using your data with other products in order to maximize, your potential new business and your potential to make sure that your clients are buying everything they need from you? So, for instance, we started out years ago as mostly a property and casualty company. That's things like your buildings, your auto fleets, products liability, things like that. And through the years, we've added to that. So now we also do employee benefits and health insurance, and we do surety bonding,
Mhm.
um, and we do life insurance and retirement planning, and we do high-end personal lines, automobile, homeowners. So as we've added these new practices on, there's no better prospect list than the people that are already buying from you. And these technology items we're talking about just makes that it's never easy, but it makes it a very efficient process to be able to go after those people and to let them know about the new things you're doing. The challenge for the insurance industry is most larger companies like us buy their core, not some of the ancillary stuff we're talking about, but they buy their core IT system from one of two vendors. Um, we talked a little bit about the consolidation in the insurance business and how I think that, you know, a smaller number of players is never good for the consumer. Well,
Yeah.
a smaller number of IT players is never good for the consumer either. So we basically only have two real players out there. Um, and new development, new real enhancements are slow to come. Um, so that I think that's the biggest challenge is getting the automation companies to really um, kind of up their game to provide for the needs that their customers have. And then uh, along with that is making it easier for some of these ancillary IT appliances and IT products to integrate with those core issues. Because that's where the magic happens. That's the secret sauce is when everything works together.
That's a really interesting take on the whole perspective, and the idea that, as we start to limit the number of players, how that poses a challenge for everybody, not just the consumer, not just the industry as a whole, but everybody is affected. And so that's something definitely for consideration as the industry and our technological landscape evolves. Um, as we close out this episode, Wynne, I'd love to hear from you. If you had one piece of advice for somebody in a similar role to you who is challenged with exploring some of these ideas and technologies, what would that piece of advice be?
Gee, that's a good one. I think the advice would be to really try to understand the value of your data. And I think people in the insurance industry have been, particularly in the broker and agency side, have been slow to recognize that that data is really valuable. They look at it mostly as a necessity that enables them to service their clients. So for instance, if you're a business owner and you just bought 10 new trucks, we need to get you certain documentation for those new vehicles. We need to add them onto your policy. And that's what the data and the technology that every insurance agent has. That's how they use that data every day. And I think they focus on it in that manner, in a transactional manner. And it's a bit of a leap to look at it as more than that, and to really look at it as the lifeblood of your company, and to leverage that data to enhance what you can do for your customers and enhance your own company's success.
Very sound advice. If somebody wanted to further this conversation with you, maybe pick your brain or perhaps even work with you, is there a chance that they could do that? And if so, what's the best way to do that?
Happy to do that. Our website is widely available, easily found. It's bradley-parker.com. And my info is on there. Some of the stuff we've done is on there, and various easy ways to contact us by phone, by email is all out there. And we're happy to help companies. We're happy to help individuals. One of the things we like to do around here is give back. And it's not always about closing a deal. Sometimes it's just about helping somebody who needs a hand to work. We're here to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll make sure to link to all that stuff in the show notes. And if you want to get in touch with me or my team for any reason, it's nextgengrowth.com. Otherwise, that's it for this episode. And I will see you in the next.